Woodbridge Township, New Jersey, 2004. 3 suitcases. That is all that was left of William McGuire. Not a grave, not a goodbye, not a single word of explanation to the 2 little boys who woke up one spring morning and never saw their father again. Just 3 matching suitcases floating in the waters of Chesapeake Bay, found days apart by strangers who had no idea what they were pulling out of the water. Someone had taken a husband, a father, a man with a new house and a future, and reduced him to something that fit inside luggage. And the person who knew exactly what was in those suitcases was sitting in New Jersey, waiting. Some marriages look perfect from the outside, the kind that makes other couples quietly measure themselves against it. 2 successful people, a growing family, a home being built, a future taking shape exactly the way futures are supposed to. Bill and Melanie McGuire had that kind of marriage. Their friends adored them, their children were thriving, and in the spring of 2004, they had just signed the papers on the house they had been working toward for years. From the outside, everything looked exactly right. But the inside of a marriage and the inside of one are sometimes 2 completely different places. And what was happening inside the McGuire marriage, quietly, carefully, completely hidden from the people who thought they knew them best, was something that nobody who loved Bill McGuire saw coming. Not until it was far too late. William McGuire was born in the Bronx on September 21, 1964. He was the kind of man who filled a room without trying. Sharp, funny, magnetic in a way that felt entirely natural. The sort of person who could tease you relentlessly and somehow leave you feeling better about yourself afterward. His longtime friend, John Rice, who had known him since their shared days in the U.S. Navy in the 1980s, described him with the easy precision of someone who had spent years watching a person simply be themselves. Bill had charisma, John said, a Saturday Night Live kind of humor. He could pick on you and make you feel good about it at the same time. After his military service, Bill built himself deliberately and patiently into something. He relocated to New Jersey, earned a degree from the New Jersey Institute of Technology in 2001, and secured a position as a senior programmer analyst and adjunct professor with NJIT's Department of Information Resource Development, a career constructed through real effort over real years. A life that had been earned rather than handed to him. Away from work, Bill had one passion that his friends knew well: blackjack. Atlantic City was his arena, and he took the game seriously, not recklessly, but with the same focused energy he brought to everything else. John remembered a weekend getaway to Atlantic City in 2003, where Bill walked away thousands of dollars richer. He played well, he knew what he was doing, and he never let it become something that consumed him. That was Bill, measured, present, fully invested in the life he was building. Melanie Slate was born in New Jersey on October 8, 1972. She was driven in the quiet, consistent way that tends to produce real results over time. She graduated from Rutgers University with a double major in mathematics and psychology, then went straight into nursing school at the Charles E. Gregory School of Nursing, finishing second in her class. She landed a position as a fertility nurse at Reproductive Medical Associates of New Jersey in Morristown, where her patients described her in terms that were almost uniformly devoted. "A powerhouse in a tiny body," one patient said. "She makes you feel like your only patient." 5 feet 3 inches tall, mentally and physically strong, gifted at her work, and genuinely loved by the people she cared for. Everything about Melanie, on the surface, pointed toward a person of exceptional capability and quiet dedication. When Bill and Melanie found each other, the people around them recognized immediately that something real had clicked into place. John Rice put it simply, it took a woman with a high IQ to keep up with Bill, and Melanie fit that perfectly. Their friends saw 2 accomplished, well-matched people building something together that seemed genuinely solid. They married in 1999. John and Susan Rice, who had been there from the beginning, celebrated with them, taking the then cash-strapped newlyweds on a Bahamas vacation as a wedding gift. 2 sons arrived in the years that followed. The family settled into life in Woodbridge Township, New Jersey. Careers were growing, the children were thriving, and in April 2004, Bill and Melanie closed on a $450,000 property in Warren County. The dream house, the one they had been working toward, the next chapter finally beginning. Bill called John the moment it was done. He was, John remembered, genuinely and completely happy, the kind of happy that is impossible to fake and impossible to misread. They said they would talk soon. It was the last conversation they ever had.
April 29th, 2004. Bill McGuire was 39 years old. He had 2 boys, ages 4 and 2. He had just signed the papers on the house he had spent years working toward. He had a career, a community, a future that was supposed to begin any day now. And then he simply wasn't there anymore. Melanie told the people around her that they had argued, that the argument had turned physical, that Bill had struck her, tried to force a cloth into her mouth, raged through the apartment before finally storming out and declaring he was never coming back. She said she had grabbed one of the boys and locked herself in the bathroom until the storm passed, that when she came out, the apartment was empty and Bill was gone.
Still arguing, and there's the laundry basket, and there's a dryer sheet just hanging out of one of the baby's sleeves. He hated them. He thought it was lazy that I wouldn't stand there and put in the liquid fabric softener, and yeah. And it went out of control. This was the type of mother I was, that I would leave this sheet in there for my baby to possibly choke on. Before I know it, I'm up against the wall, and the dryer sheet is being shoved into my throat. And then he just smacked me.
In the face?
Yeah, open hand, because he probably would have broken my cheek if it had been a closed fist. And I looked down, and there's my 2-year-old. I grabbed the baby and went to the bathroom right behind me and shut the door. I just wanted away from him at that point.
That was her story. The people who heard it tried to make it fit the man they knew. John Rice couldn't make it fit. Bill would not have walked away from his boys. He would not have left the day after signing the papers on the house he had been so excited about. He would not have simply disappeared without a word to the people who mattered to him. John knew Bill, and this wasn't Bill. But without anything more concrete than instinct and the quiet wrongness of a story that didn't quite hold its shape, there was nothing to do but wait. And so they waited. Meanwhile, Melanie moved quickly. Within 3 weeks of Bill's supposed disappearance, she had packed every one of his belongings into black bags and given them away. She had initiated divorce proceedings. She had put the house up for sale. Not the new house, they had never moved in, the apartment, the life they had shared together. Cleared out and dismantled in less time than it takes most people to process that something has gone wrong. For the people watching, it raised a question that nobody wanted to say out loud. Why was she moving so fast?
May 5th, 2004. Chesapeake Bay, Virginia Beach. Two fishermen, Chris Henkel and Don Connor, were out on the water with Don's 12-year-old son. A spring morning. The kind of day that exists for exactly this. The water calm, the light good, nothing required of anyone except patience. And then the boy noticed something in the water. A dark green suitcase floating adrift. He pulled it into the boat the way a 12-year-old pulls at anything that promises the possibility of something interesting. He opened it. Inside, wrapped in black plastic bags, were a pair of human legs severed at the knees. 6 days later, on May 11th, a graduate student doing field work at Fisherman Island National Wildlife Refuge on Virginia's eastern shore found a second suitcase washed ashore. Same make, same color, larger. Inside, a man's torso and head, 2 bullet wounds visible in the chest. On May 16th, a third suitcase surfaced in the same waters of Chesapeake Bay, a man's hips and thighs. 3 suitcases, 11 days, the same bay, the same matching luggage set, drifting apart in the water, like someone had hoped the distance between them would be enough to make the whole thing disappear. It wasn't.
3 matching suitcases scattered across the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia.
The latest and third suitcase containing human remains was brought ashore Sunday. Police got a tip from a recreational boater about its location in the water near the second island of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. Then last Tuesday, a student researcher found the second one on Fisherman's Island.
What's inside? As bad as you can imagine.
The contents were covered with a thick trash bag, like a hefty bag or something. And I said, uh-oh. I was a little bit nervous then when I saw the black bags in there. So turned to say something to Dee, and while I was talking to Dee, the young boy reached down and ripped open the plastic trash bags. There was no doubt of what it was. It was a set of human legs.
Virginia Beach investigators worked quickly and carefully through what they had. The wounds told them the man had been shot, twice in the torso, once in the head, a .38 caliber revolver. The precision of it and the methodical nature of what followed told them something else. This was not chaos. This was not rage that had gotten out of hand in a moment nobody planned for. This was organized. The dismemberment had occurred shortly after death. The body had been separated, wrapped, packed, and distributed across a body of water that stretched across state lines. Whoever had done this had moved through each step deliberately, with the kind of focused attention that required both knowledge and composure. The surgical precision of the cuts suggested someone with medical training. One of the suitcases contained a hospital blanket, and nobody knew who the victim was. A facial reconstruction was prepared from the remains and distributed nationally. Investigators waited for someone to recognize a face that had been through too much to be easily recognized. They didn't have to wait long. Susan Rice saw the sketch on television. She knew immediately, the way you know a face that has been part of your life for over 20 years, regardless of what condition it is in. Her heart, she would later say, simply dropped. She called Virginia Beach police on May 21st. The victim was Bill McGuire, and the investigation that had started in the waters of Chesapeake Bay was about to move to New Jersey, to a clean, freshly painted apartment and the woman who had been living in it alone for the past 3 weeks. When investigators arrived in New Jersey to inform Melanie that her husband had been found, they watched her carefully. Her reaction on the surface looked like shock, but she never asked how he died. Not once. Not in that first conversation, not in the ones that followed. In a moment where almost every person who has ever received news like that reaches instinctively for the details, what happened, where, how, Melanie simply didn't ask. The investigators noted it and kept moving. The McGuire apartment had been emptied, the walls had been freshly painted. Forensic teams worked through it methodically and found nothing conclusive. No trace of violence, no evidence that anything had happened there. The apartment had been cleaned with a thoroughness that in its own way told its own story. Bill's car was located in Atlantic City, parked outside the Flamingo Motel in impeccable condition. No signs of struggle, no obvious evidence of violence. But in the glove compartment, investigators found a vial of chloral hydrate, a powerful sedative, the kind of drug that, administered correctly, would render a person unconscious before they had any chance to resist. Tracing the prescription that had been used to obtain it led investigators to a doctor at the fertility clinic where Melanie worked. The doctor denied writing it. His signature, he said, had been forged. The investigation had found its first thread, and pulling on it would unravel everything. Phone records introduced a name that hadn't come up before. Dr. Bradley Miller, a physician at the same fertility clinic where Melanie worked. The calls between them were frequent, consistent, and heavily weighted toward late-night hours. When investigators looked further, the picture became clear. Melanie and Dr. Miller had been in a relationship for approximately 3 years. A full, sustained affair conducted alongside her marriage, beneath the surface of the life she and Bill had been building together. Dr. Miller, when interviewed, did not protect her. He told investigators things that Melanie had told him. That after her argument with Bill on April 29th, she had driven to Atlantic City and moved Bill's car to the Flamingo Motel. A deliberate act designed to create the impression that Bill had gone there on his own. That the day before the first suitcase was found, she had told him she was going furniture shopping in Delaware. Delaware, a state that sits directly on the route between New Jersey and Chesapeake Bay. Her E-ZPass toll record confirmed the trip. And then investigators discovered that Melanie had called E-ZPass afterward and attempted to have that 85-cent charge removed from her account history. An unidentified man, believed to be her father, had called separately and made the same request. An 85-cent charge. The kind of detail that only matters to someone who knows exactly what that route means.
Patty Precioso says that Melanie actually left the night before from New Jersey, drove Bill's remains to Virginia.
We believe that that was when she took the suitcases with Bill's remains and got rid of them in the Chesapeake Bay. And the first suitcase turned up the very next day.
But of course, Melanie thinks this theory is preposterous.
The evidence was circumstantial. Each piece, taken alone, could be explained. But investigators were no longer looking at individual pieces. They were looking at a pattern. 2 days before Bill disappeared, on April 26, 2004, Melanie had visited a gun shop in Easton, Pennsylvania, and purchased a .38 caliber revolver with wad cutter bullets. The same caliber,
the same type of ammunition recovered from Bill's body in the waters of Chesapeake Bay. She had told a friend she wanted the gun for protection, that Bill had been getting paranoid and she felt unsafe.
I told you about buying a gun because my husband wanted one. He wanted one? Yeah. Not only did he want one, I bought one for him. Why didn't you tell me?
When police later asked her about the weapon, she said it was missing. The plastic bags used to wrap Bill's remains matched a roll of bags found in Melanie's home, forensically confirmed to have come from the same source. The 3 suitcases pulled from Chesapeake Bay were not random luggage. They were part of a matching set that Melanie had stored in her basement.
You can see these lines here. There's a straight line here, this sort of smooth line. There's also 2 other lines close together in basically the exact same position. This indicates that these 2 bags were made at the same facility on the same line within a very close proximity of time.
The hospital blanket found wrapped around Bill's remains matched blankets used at the fertility clinic where Melanie worked. Fiber evidence recovered from the body matched the fabric of the couple's sofa, consistent with a cushion having been used as a makeshift silencer during the shooting. And on the family computer, investigators found search histories, methods for committing murder without leaving detectable traces, searches conducted in the weeks before Bill disappeared. Taken together, the picture was not of a woman who had argued with her husband and watched him walk out the door. It was of a woman who had been planning, who had obtained a sedative on a forged prescription, who had purchased a weapon 2 days before her husband vanished, who had shot him, dismembered him, packed him into the family luggage, driven to Virginia, and distributed what remained of him across a bay, and then come home, cleared out the apartment, initiated divorce proceedings, and continued going to work. The affair had been running for 3 years. The planning, investigators believed, had not been far behind it.
It's now 2:30 p.m., May 31st, 2005. Brad Miller making an outgoing call to Melanie McGuire. Hello?
What's up?
I've told them everything that I know. But they're, they just don't.
They want you to break.
I mean, if you want us to stick together, I gotta know everything now, before this goes any further.
What do you mean you have to know everything now?
I mean, there's no other secrets between us, right?
That I can think of.
You swear you had nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
And your children's lives. Because I'm standing by you.
Yeah.
June 2nd, 2005. Melanie McGuire drove her sons to daycare. She went to work. She saw her patients the way she always did, attentive, professional, present. And then police arrested her in the fertility clinic where she had worked for years, in the building where she had forged a prescription, among her colleagues who had trusted her completely. She was charged with first-degree murder. She pleaded not guilty. The trial began on March 5, 2007, at the Middlesex County Courthouse in New Brunswick. Prosecutor Patti Prezioso laid out a case built entirely on circumstantial evidence. No confession, no eyewitness, not a single piece of proof that closed the door on every other possibility. What she had instead was a chain. Link after link after link, each one connected to the next, each one pointing in the same direction. The gun, the prescription, the toll record, the bags, the suitcases, the blanket, the computer searches, the affair, the 3 weeks of rapid, purposeful dismantling of a shared life before anyone even knew Bill was dead. The defense argued that Bill's gambling had made him enemies,
that the prosecution had decided on Melanie from the beginning and built its case around that decision. That circumstantial evidence, however compelling in volume, was not proof. The jury deliberated. On April 23, 2007, they returned their verdict. Guilty, first-degree murder, perjury, illegal possession of a firearm, desecration of human remains. On July 19, 2007, Melanie McGuire was sentenced to life in prison. Under the terms of her sentence, she will not be eligible for parole until she is 100 years old. She has maintained her innocence every single day since.
Bill McGuire's sons were 4 and 2 years old when their father disappeared. They grew up without him, raised by his sister Cindy, separated from their mother, building their understanding of what happened piece by piece as they became old enough to carry it. John Rice, who had known Bill since the Navy, who had celebrated his wedding and his new house and the life he was so genuinely excited about, lost his closest friend to a bay in Virginia and a matching set of luggage and a marriage that had been something very different on the inside from what it appeared on the outside.
He was constantly looking at homes. He wanted to end up buying a house before he turned 40.
He did want to move down here to Virginia Beach. We took pictures of houses in our neighborhood, but Melanie just would not hear of it.
Bill McGuire was a man who had earned everything he had, who had served his country, built a career, raised 2 boys, and on the last day anyone who loved him spoke to him, had been genuinely, completely happy about what was coming next. He deserved to find out what that was. He deserved to move into that house. He deserved to watch his boys grow up. None of that happened. And in a correctional facility in Clinton, New Jersey, Melanie McGuire continues to say that she did not do it, that the real killer is still out there, that the system got it wrong. But somewhere in the waters of Chesapeake Bay, for 11 days in May 2004, 3 suitcases drifted in the current, and inside them was everything that remained of a man who had no idea what was coming. Melanie McGuire has maintained her innocence for over 20 years. No confession, no single piece of direct evidence, just a chain of circumstances that a jury decided was enough. So here is the question I want you to answer in the comments. Do you think she did it alone? Or is there someone out there who has never been touched by any of this? Subscribe, drop your thoughts below, and come back next week because the next case we are covering will make this one look simple.